Yeah. Anyway, on that note, let's get to Jake Tapper interviewing Abdul El-Sayed.
A huge rally last night with Bernie and AOC.
I gotta pee.
I want to play something you said at this rally in Detroit last night.
Are we going to let 50 million in lies steal this election? Hell no. Are we going to let Trump donors, billionaires, and AIPAC lies steal this election?
Steal this election is a pretty stark term. I haven't really heard it used since 2024. To be clear, this is a close race. Congresswoman Haley Stevens is a 4-term congresswoman endorsed by outgoing Senator Gary Peters. Are you saying that if you don't win this election, it will be because it was stolen?
I believe in the rigor of the democratic process, Jake, but I also believe that the corruption of billionaire money, AIPAC money, to the tune of $50 million being spent is anti-democratic on its own terms. If you were to take all the outside spending in this race out, this would not be a close election. But it speaks to the way that, unfortunately, money from DTE, our local utility, money from Blue Cross Blue Shield, money from AIPAC has come in to try to truck this election in favor of somebody who they know is going to do their business instead of the people's. And I think that's anti-democratic on its own terms. It's why I'm running on getting money out of politics so we can put money back in people's pockets and pass Medicare for all.
So the attacks on Haley Stevens are also at issue. I know there are a lot of attack ads against you, but there are so many attacks on Haley Stevens that on Friday you posted, quote, "It's become impossible to ignore the way that people online make fun of my opponent for things that have nothing to do with her policies or politics. It's unkind and unhelpful," unquote. It's true that there are some really harsh comments about Haley Stevens that I've seen. Here's one. Quote, "She's a suit with a large AIPAC bank account. That's it. She can't string together two."
I want to point out something here with this Jake Tapper conversation that's taking place. First of all, Abdul did a fantastic job. He knows how to hold his own. Okay, in the most contentious environments. And I would go so far as to say this is probably more contentious than Fox News. It's crazy, but I think Jake Tapper is probably a tougher interview for someone like Abdul El-Sayed than the average Fox News guy. Because unlike Fox News, he has prestige amongst liberals, and he always will weaponize the legitimacy that he has in liberal circles to attack Muslims. Okay? And that is, I think, a more difficult conversation to have than to talk to a hostile Republican. However, one thing that I find particularly strange about this is Jake Tapper recently had the President of the United States of America on his broadcast. He's supposed to be a liberal guy. Sure, the conversation took place after Lindsey Graham's death. Having said that, the fact that Jake Tapper was far less contentious with the fascist Republican president of the United States of America than he is with a progressive running for Senate in Michigan on a platform of universal health care and disavowing AIPAC, a platform that the overwhelming majority of Democrats agree with. The fact that he's more contentious on an interview like this shows exactly what Jake Tapper believes. Jake Tapper finds Abdul El-Sayed to be a far more negative influence in American politics than even Donald Trump. It's clear. It's clear.
Coherent sentences. She's a sellout who forgot how to think for herself. Corporate money can't buy her.
You said we should beat the Republicans. Are you a beater?
Do you know who
Aren't
said
you
that?
woke Trump?
That was you and your campaign.
And I want to speak to that because every single time we talk about all the outside money coming in as a crutch in this election, it seems as though we're not hearing any explanation as to why. I think we saw some of it last week when the Congresswoman voted in favor of sending $3.3 billion of our tax dollars that should be spent on our healthcare and our schools to a foreign government to buy bombs and tanks. I would really like to hear a fulsome explanation of exactly what the trade-off has been. And unfortunately, $50 million doesn't fall off trees, doesn't come from nowhere. It comes because there's been some expectation on the back. So I want to know what was said to get that money into this election. But I'll be clear, I don't think it's kind to make fun of somebody for how they talk or how they show up. I also don't think it's kind to make insinuations about somebody's character as is being done to the tune of tens of millions of dollars. And here's the thing about it. I've known the
I think one is far worse than the other, by the way. Because Abdul's statements against Haley Stevens are nothing in comparison to what Haley Stevens' campaign backed by $50 million of ad spend look like. They're smearing him. They're calling him a misogynist. They don't have any evidence for this other than he disagreed with powerful women at different points in his life. It's such a ridiculous. It is the lowest I've seen these motherfuckers go. And then besides that, of course, not so subtly, terror jacketing him, saying he is a violent, woman-hating, anti-Semitic Muslim. You know how those guys are. That's the implication, right? The implication here is Abdul El-Sayed, Abdul Rahman Mohammed El-Sayed is a dangerous, aggressive, woman-hating, anti-Semitic Muslim. Now, of course, it's the Democratic Party primary, which is precisely the reason why they can't say it to that degree, right? They can't do that. Republicans will do that because they know that if they go too hard, they'll overplay their hand and liberals will get annoyed with it. So they're trying to tactically imply without outwardly saying it. Republicans will say it with their full chest, but it won't matter at that point because obviously all the liberals are going to be on the side of Abdul El-Sayed.
Congresswoman for a very long time. In fact, she's met my daughters. My daughter, 8 years old.
Apparently, the College Democrats of America was sponsored by J Street. I know. Yeah. And J Street came out and said, look, we have our disagreements with Hasan Piker, but we have no problem. We're honored to sponsor the College Democrats of America. Because guess what? While I have my disagreements with J Street, they're not insane, okay? They're not as insane as like the AIPAC-backed Democrats are. They can read the room. And now they're yelling at J Street over it. What they don't know is like I've been trying to even have a conversation with Jeremy Ben-Ami, the president of J Street.
She told her, you should be really proud of your dad, although her allies are now running ads to say that somehow I'm disrespectful to women.
Yeah. Breaking. Jewish Insider via Haley Cohen. College Dems conference co-sponsored by J Street is featuring Hasan Piker. J Street President Jeremy Ben-Ami said his organization is proud to sponsor the event. Failing to show up would be an abdication of our responsibility to make the case for our pro-Israel views, J Street said. Okay. Ultimately, J Street understands that there is a much wider diversity of opinion on the issue of Israel on the Democratic Party side, and if they want to continue to maintain a level of support for Israel amongst Democrats, they have to allow people like myself to be a part of this equation because I'm far closer to the average person's perspective than they are. Yeah, see, he said, we had no role in the selection of speakers, and we're sure there will be speakers, including Hasan Piker, with whom we disagree. Being in venues like this is even more important when there are participants with whom we disagree. Failing to show up would be an abdication of our responsibility to make the case for our pro-Israel views. During his speech Saturday evening at the conference, Piker distanced himself from mainstream Democratic Party, condemning Democrats who compromise, who conciliate, who betray us to loud applause. No more to the Democrats who collaborate and cooperate with the fascists, who will fund ICE, who will fund Israel. We don't need those Democrats anymore, Piker said. The College Democrats Convention is hosting several speakers who hold extreme anti-Israel views, including Democratic Socialists of America activist and Arizona congressional candidate like Deja Fox, commentator Kat Al-Ghazaleh, gun control activist and former DNC Vice Chair David Hogg, and Democratic Socialists of America endorsed congressional nominee Maylai Quiros. Wow. Georgia State Representative Ruva Rahman, a Palestinian American legislator with a long record of anti-Israel activism, will also be speaking. Lineup also includes elected officials who've been critical of Israel's policies, such as Representative Jamie Raskin, Chris Van Hollen, Jason Crow. College Democrats of America is the official collegiate arm and student outreach branch of the Democratic National Committee. Neither group responded to a request for comment from Jewish Insider about their decision to invite Piker. You know what's funny? They're an outreach branch of the DNC, and the DNC has not given them, the DNC's given them literally basically nothing. They were talking about it. Their largest donor is Cherokee Nation. DNC is like a minuscule part of their funding vehicle. To be fair, the DNC is bankrupt, so that's probably why they don't have any money in the fucking bank. Yeah, Tom Steyer listened to my pleas and maxed out to Abdul. Tom Steyer contributes the maximum legal donation of $7,000 to Abdul El-Sayed's campaign, the Michigan Democratic primaries, on August 4th in 16 days. Speaking of CNN, they're hating on Bernie there. Yeah, I know. I know. We're going to cover that in a second. There's a new CNN piece that came out. It's not even hating on Bernie necessarily because it makes Bernie look good. Anyway, let's finish this Jake Tapper conversation.
My daughter is now hearing about. So I'd like to hear the same kindness. I want to know whether or not the congresswoman also thinks that that's unkind and unright.
I hear your comments about the ads being run against you that are attacking you from a...
But I happen to agree with those ads. I happen to agree with the contents of those ads.
AIPAC and other organizations. But I'm specifically talking about comments you personally made about Haley Stevens.
Yeah, no,
Haley Stevens has made those comments personally about Abdul El-Sayed as well. Abdul El-Sayed, on the other hand, did not get outside. Abdul El-Sayed didn't put in a red box in his media tab on his platform to attack Haley Stevens for having a goofy voice or not knowing what she speaks of, whereas Haley Stevens did do that to Abdul El-Sayed. So campaigns right now can't directly communicate with super PACs, even though the Supreme Court just made it legal for them to do so. So what they do instead is a concept called red boxing, where they put bullet points on their media tabs for all of the friendly super PACs to get their notes from. They'll say, attack my opponent with this perspective, attack my opponent from this angle, that kind of thing, right? And Haley Stevens' media tab straight up had attack Abdul El-Sayed for, being a woman hater, basically. So technically, Abdul El-Sayed's one comment on the Dave Weigel interview is not a fucking apt comparison to the $50 million of attack ads. Yeah, here it is. Haley Stevens isn't allowed to coordinate directly with AIPAC, so that she does instead is put directions on her website telling them what flyers she wants to be mailed to people and when. Yeah. There's a Substack post here to interested parties memo. There were 2,500 people in Grand Rapids, by the way, plus overflow. It's insane. He's going to cook. I think Abdul's going to shock the world. Okay. This is a big battle. This is perhaps our biggest battle yet. This community has been involved with a lot of campaigns this cycle, many of which were tough where our guys were getting outspent 5-1, 6-1, but never 12-1. Okay? I think Abdul El-Sayed, we shouldn't get confident. We should continue pushing. I think this is a tougher battle than Daria Lisa. Yes. Daria Lisa might have been the toughest battle that we partook in, but this is a tougher battle than that. Okay? $54 million. That's the amount of moneyed interest that we're fighting against. That's precisely the reason why the approach is only going to get harder, because mainstream media is also terrified, or at least the actors within mainstream outlets that are worried about an anti-Israel senator winning are going to do everything in their power to try and rat fuck this candidacy. This on top of the corporate entities that are dumping, again, $54 million. But as I always say, they have the money, but we have the people. Okay? And let's be real. The harder they focus on Michigan, the easier it gets for us in other races as well, because this is a national movement. This is a national movement. So every dollar that they spend on Abdul that we can posture defensively against is a dollar that they're not spending against Francesca Hong, is a dollar that they're not spending against Kai Newkirk. It's a dollar that they're not spending against Cori Bush, Hartzell Gray, Oliver Larkin, Elijah Manley. But it's clear to me that they are hyper-focused on this. So Abdul is, in some ways, our tank. He's drawing a lot of the aggro. So we have to offer sufficient defense. And then we can go on the offense on all these other races that are also tough battles on their own. This was a really solid piece of analysis from Dave Weigel that I'm going to get to after we cover when we get to the CNN piece. But let's finish this.
I already told you, I think she's plenty smart, plenty capable. I just want to understand why it is that she's been willing to take $50 million from organizations that have their best interests and not Michiganders' best interests at heart. I've been up and down my state. I actually did the work of traveling 110 different cities, 475 public events. And where I go, people ask me, how come I can't afford my groceries? Why is my gas so expensive? How am I going to afford healthcare? And it's crazy to me that you want to run for U.S. Senate and you want to take money from the very same people who are raising prices on everybody. So I just think we need a fulsome explanation. I would like to hear it. I think the Congresswoman has had plenty of opportunities, and I think this is one of them now.
Just to be clear, the money being spent on her behalf is not money going to her, but I understand the point you're making. It's interesting, though, because you talk about support for Israel. The New York City Mayor Zoran Mamdani just this weekend was asked by the New York Times if he thinks there's room in the party for Democrats who work with AIPAC. And Mayor Mamdani said, quote, if they are Democrats and they run as Democrats and they win as Democrats, then they should be part of the Democratic Party. When you were asked by CNN if support for Israel could be about anything other than money, you told CNN, quote, not if you're a Democrat and you believe in human rights, unquote. You also said, quote, every definition of a Jewish state ends up in some articulation of illiberal values, unquote. So it sounds as though, and correct me if I'm wrong, it sounds as though you and Mayor Mamdani disagree about how big this tent should be, whether there's room for it in the tent for Israel supporters.
Dude, this conversation is so fucking annoying to me. Like, oh, is there, hey, you guys who we are treating as outsiders, who we absolutely fucking despise and don't want you to be a part of this tent, are you comfortable with having people who are pro-genocide in your coalition? Why is this always a conversation? Well, I know why. Because they're still trying to position all the anti-Zionists, all the Israel critics as outsiders that just want to destroy the party. The party must remain a pro-Israel party. That's the perspective here, right? Ridiculous framing overall.
Well, Jake, I'll tell you this. There's always room in the
And
tank.
no, Mamdani didn't say, oh, it's great when people are pro-Israel and they're a part of the fucking coalition. They're just presenting it as such because Zohran Mamdani, at the end of the day, is a politician and he does the political speak. And he gave plenty of criticisms to AIPAC, plenty of criticisms to Israel in that conversation, but he also basically danced around the issue of is it appropriate if there are, pro-Israel candidates that you can coalesce around, right? He avoided it. He avoided giving a direct response to it. And I'm certain Abdul will do the same.
For folks. And I'm for human rights. I'm for equal rights to peace, dignity, and self-determination. Whatever you think about the right of Israel to exist, I wonder if they have a right to our tax dollars. And here's the thing about it. Every time I come on CNN, you guys ask me the same questions about these theoretical rights of existence or whether or not I agree with the mayor of New York. I'm running for Senate in Michigan. And in Michigan, people can't afford their basic needs. They don't get the healthcare they need and deserve. They're worried about the quality of their kids' school. And the question seems less to be about the interests of Michiganders than the fact of something happening 6,000 miles away. I'm running for Michigan Senate, and I want our tax dollars spent in Michigan on our schools and on our healthcare. And the idea that somebody wants to vote to send that money away, to me, seems to be an anathema. So, with all due respect to the mayor of New York, I just think my tax dollars should be spent here. And I'd rather have a conversation about Michiganders than what's happening 6,000 miles away.
The war with Iran is clearly heating up. 3 U.S. service members, 2 were killed and 1 is missing overnight. They were stationed in Jordan. 20 weeks ago, when Iran's supreme leader was killed, you told your staff, according to audio obtained by the Washington Free Beacon, quote, there are a lot of people in Dearborn who are sad today, so I just don't want to comment on Khamenei.
He's using shamelessly Washington Free Beacon opposition. I don't see liberals doing that to centrists. Okay? Liberals will never take a Washington Free Beacon article that is attacking a centrist candidate and then deploy it against a centrist candidate. They would never do that shit. It's the most cynical, negatively framed interpretation of a conversation that took place. So why are you taking the framing of a psychotic right-wing outlet? Why are you legitimizing the Washington Free Beacon? Are you going to legitimize Steve Bannon next? Are you going to legitimize Nick Fuentes next? What the fuck's going on here?
At all, unquote. I thought that quote was interesting because the Ayatollah...
Because you're Muslim. I thought that quote was interesting, and I'm bringing it up because you're Muslim and you're anti-Israel, and I fucking hate you. And I wish I could tell you how I feel openly, but I can't because you're a very popular figure in the party right now. I'm going to try to fucking knock the wind out of your sails to the best of my ability with this conversation, but obviously I have to play this game. I have to play this game where I'm being polite towards you while simultaneously serving you as many Islamophobic attacks as possible.
Ayatollah has killed tens of thousands of innocent Iranians, not to mention the proxies that Iran has funded that have killed innocent civilians all over the Middle East. Why were you worried about offending people who support the Ayatollah?
Jake, on a day where we're mourning the loss of 2 more service members in a war we never should have fought, I think all of us ought to step back and ask whether or not everybody in Michigan, frankly, everybody in America, shouldn't be sad about the fact that this president, backed by the prime minister of a foreign government, took us to a war we had no business fighting in. So yeah, I didn't want to comment on it then because it's a ridiculous pretext. And now you're asking me about the Ayatollah, who's dead, by the way, and you're not asking me about the service members who've died. You're not asking me about whether or not this war should have ever been fought. You're not asking me about whether or not the costs that are being borne by Michiganders in the tax dollars we pay or the gas prices that are insane right now are worth it. And so, look, let's have a conversation based in Michigan. I'm running for Senate in Michigan. And I think here in Michigan, all of us are probably sad about the fact that we went to war that we never should have fought. I'd rather our money be spent here.
I was specifically asking you about comments you didn't want to make because you didn't want to offend people in Dearborn, which is in Michigan. Let's turn to immigration policy. You've been very critical of Trump's immigration policy. In his new book,
this level of follow-up, putting words in his mouth, refusing to understand the point, refusing to entertain a broader point. Yeah. Tapper, Bash, Jennings, and other CNN pundits were the biggest cheerleaders of the Iran war. No self-reflection and no accountability after the war they supported led to needless loss of life and hardened the Iranian regime, which they all thought was days away from collapsing. It's a ridiculous pretext. And now you're asking me about the Ayatollah who's dead, by the way, and you're not asking me about the service members who've died. You're not asking me about whether or not this war should have been ever fought because Jake Tapper supported the war. He never said anything about fucking offending people? I know, he didn't.
About comments you didn't want to make because you didn't want to offend people in Dearborn, which is in Michigan. Let's turn to immigration policy. You've been very critical of Trump's immigration policy. In his new book, Democratic former Senator Ken Salazar, who served as the U.S. ambassador to Mexico under President Biden, he says basically that the Biden administration was asleep on the wheel on immigration. He calls the Biden policies on political failure. I know you object to the Trump policy, and I know there are lots of reasons you do. Do you have any criticisms of the Biden immigration policy?
I think we could have done much better. I believe in a safe and secure border, full stop. I also believe that we have to be smart about the fact that right now, ICE is being used to terrorize people on our streets. We talk about 2 more deaths in the last 2 weeks alone. At the edge of a force that should not exist, we can have immigration policy that is smart, that keeps our southern border safe, that enforces our immigration laws, but not in a way that tears apart the Constitution itself. So yes, I think we could have done a better job. I think it's important for us to be smart. Now, I just want to push back on one thing. You've got this administration. They're making a show out of ICE enforcement. And at the same time, they're making it fundamentally unlivable for people south of our southern border. How does that make sense at all? This whole point of the Trump administration is to weaponize immigration against the Constitution itself. And I think the more we're willing to talk about that, the further we go in actually getting to an immigration policy that makes sense in this country.
I say that Abdul is running a campaign.
AOC rallies from Michigan's Abdul El-Sayed. Fuck yeah. I mean, this brings a smile to my face, tear to my eye. This is great. This is why it's important to build a motherfucking movement, folks. It's important to build a coalition. This is, and I need you to understand, in some ways, this is the easiest it's going to get. But also, in many respects, we will have more numbers later down the line. Okay? So no matter how hard it gets, we will have more soldiers to fight back against centrist forces, against the right-wing forces within the center of power in the Democratic Party. That's it. But make no mistake, today it's $54 million. Tomorrow it'll be 100. They're not going to stop. They're not going to stop. That much is clear to me. They're not going to stop until it's undeniable. And then I guess they'll move on to different tactics. But they'll always remain. There will always be this malign force in American politics that's constantly trying to pull voters, trying to pull politicians, trying to buy politicians to make sure that there is a reliable pro-Israel constituency in both of the parties.
The politics of the future. It's not something that is just seen on a screen. It is felt here in person, in the streets, at people's doors, the way that people are actually building community around a positive and affirmative message of the future is the way Democrats should be running. And I genuinely believe it's going to be the way that we can win back the House and win back the Senate as well. And it is absolutely electric, and I'm so proud to stand with Dr. Abdul El-Sayed.
We watched and learned from the best, right? That's how you built your movement that surprised the world in 2018. You knocked doors. You did the actual work. And that's the thing about it is that, like, you know, you can tell when something is built with love and care. And we tried to build this with love and care
for the people of Michigan, by the people of Michigan, of the people of Michigan, and I'm grateful that it shows. There is no other test case of the money versus the many that is as big and profound as this one. They're pulling out all the stops. They're going to probably set a record for how much money is spent against one candidate. And the idea that we're still in most polling winning, right, despite that, tells you what the people really want. And I'll just say, it's anti-democratic as hell to bring $50 million into an election. Like, imagine, just everybody should imagine there was no outside spending at all. Where would this race be? Which should tell you something about electability. Turns out, if you're electable, you actually have to inspire people to want to be a part of a movement. You actually have to inspire people to want to be a part of something, to vote affirmatively for a vision of a future that they actually want to live in. And so, you know, I just think this should open up a broader conversation about how we do politics in general, in particular, how we do politics in a party that claims to be for working people.
Man, he's so fucking good. And he's gotten better. He's so good, but he was already good, but he's gotten better too. Oh my God.
Reason the UAW
Dr. Chef, dude. Dr. Chef. He's chefing it up.
Reason the AFT endorsed us. There's a reason that the nurses endorsed us. There's a reason that AOC and Bernie are here. And that is because we want movements that put people first, front, center, and always deliver for them. I don't take money from those corporations, and they see me as an incredible threat to that system, and they should. But, you know, they're trying to, in effect, bring $50 million of outside cynical money, right, to corrupt this election in a way that the Democratic Party, frankly, should be bigger than.
The Democratic Party is...
Dems are in the middle of a civil war. He's at the heart of it. America Actually by Ested Herndon has Dr. Abdul El-Sayed on. But before we get to that, we are going to talk about Hakeem Jeffries. Bernie blowback, ladies and gentlemen. Bernie blowback. How Sanders' primary endorsements have sparked a Democratic midterm war. Now, what's interesting about this article is that it's not written by Edward Isaac Dover. It's instead written by Sarah Ferris, Manu Raju, and Allison Main. Normally, this type of article, if it's super negative, would be written by Edward Isaac Dover. So the fact that Manu's on it gives me a little bit of confidence. Okay? Edward Isaac Dover is the designated pro-Israel, anti-Bernie, like anti-Bernie-crat guy at CNN. He's the CNN payroll hatchet man. Now, one of the best parts about this article is Hakeem Jeffries confronted Senator Bernie Sanders against meddling in House primaries, particularly one involving a black Democrat. He seemed to not care, said Greg Meeks of New York, a Jeffries ally who was also on the call, said of Sanders recalling the previously unreported phone call. Fucking beast mode. My goat. Bernard has had it. Bernard has motherfucking had it, baby. Michigan is the front lines of Bernie versus leadership war with El-Sayed surging. Gary Peters was so afraid he could lose the Dems. The seat that Peters came out for Haley in a must-win House seat. Sanders is pushing Will Lawrence, activist whose remarks about black leaders have infuriated the party. They're trying to do a package deal, right? They're trying to do Bernie bros are anti-black. Once again, they're trying to rehash the old meta. And I will admit, it has been very effective in the past, okay? Especially in constituencies where the old entrenched vanguard still remains, okay? It's still a fairly reliable mechanism to thwart the left flank. I want to bring up something interesting that I saw on the timeline of an old conversation that Uncle Sam Cedar had. Okay, an old conversation from 2021 about black socialism. Okay? This is from August 4th, 2021. Let's take a look.
This is something about black politics that I think is important for particularly progressives, white or otherwise, who try to understand and ask questions like, why did black people vote for Joe Biden? I don't understand. The policies that Bernie has are so much better. Black politics is a politics of containment and capture. What does that mean? How does black politics works? When Joe Biden, when the South Carolina primaries are about to happen, Jim Clyburn has the phone number of every black church pastor in his Rolodex. Every black membership organization, fraternity, sorority, graduate chapter, and alumni chapter, which in those chapters are the teachers, the principals, and all of the administrative officials of your black high schools. Okay. All of the historically black colleges and universities, which are going to be in South Carolina, a large number of students, which is going to literally have an ideological role in shaping the politics of thousands of students. What I'm trying to say is that the way in which Clyburn does this is not because black people will, if you explain the policies to them, will not understand. Oh, this stuff, federal job.
Yeah, this is Revolution podcast for those of you who don't know. If you're actually interested in hearing this perspective and further beyond it, they're a great podcast. This is Revolution is the name of the podcast.
Guarantee and universal health care is better for us. It's that the ideological infrastructure is controlled by the black political class, and they maintain that control by exacting patronage, which I call fatback and biscuits, from the Democratic Party and its corporate acolytes, and handing it out piecemeal to people who are within their constituency through public service types of policies. And that aspect of how black politics works is what, in order for anyone who's interested in having any kind of left, and I've said this and I'll say it again, you will not have a left in America with effective politics without black people, because there's never been a left in America with effective politics without black people. And if you do not do that, black politics will be used to destroy the left, like it was done in 2016 and 2020. You have to understand and find a way to puncture the ideological.
And there are certain things. Look, I've been talking to a lot of people about this kind of stuff for quite a while now, because it's something that I acknowledged, is something that I understood fairly early on. Black people demographically are the most progressive voting bloc in this country. Okay? Straight up. Issue after issue after issue, black people are consistently, bar none, the most progressive, the most reliable progressive voting bloc in the country. Okay? This is 100% the case. Okay? But it is a policy of containment. It is a politics of containment as well. And therefore, there is a lot of understandable mistrust towards outsiders, specifically progressive outsiders. And I think Jim Clyburn weaponizes that all the time. Okay? And I think we on the left, when we speak on certain issues, like when we say stuff, especially because, look, I'm white. I'm Muslim, but I'm white, right? When we speak on certain issues, when we speak out against black people, even if they're centrist liberals, for example, right? That comes across very differently to a lot of older voters, especially, right? That comes across as unnecessarily antagonistic. That's number one. Number two. There's still no penetration into the voter turnout machine or the infrastructure. And part of that is because there aren't a lot of, and this is changing now, but there aren't a lot of visible black socialists. Okay? And part of that is also because black progressives are oftentimes sidelined, not by the progressive movement, mind you. Just if you're black, it's already harder for you to generate more goodwill within the party. Summer Lee is the example I'm thinking of. Ayanna Pressley is another example I'm thinking of. Summer Lee's a great example because, like, she is one of the congressional representatives that's closest to me ideologically, and yet many people don't know of her, right? Ayanna Pressley, I agree with on a lot of stuff. She's a very consistently progressive politician, and again, many people don't know of her. Cori Bush, obviously this community is aware, but of Cori Bush. We've campaigned with Cori as well. But like, this is in some instances by design, right? Ilhan Omar as well. So there is definitely a problem with black visibility in general, and it's doubly difficult. It's especially difficult if you are if you're also outside of the establishment, outside of the center of power within the Congressional Black Caucus, for example. If you're not a part of this vehicle, if you want to be an agent of change, you don't even have that leg up. Now, here's the thing. Summerlee isn't DSA. DSA discarded her and she's a socialist still. Yeah, Summerlee isn't DSA because of the DSA, specific DSA chapter's fault. Okay? So maybe hush. Anyway, we're not going to get into that. But the other part of it, I do think black socialists get sidelined by white progressives. I mean, I don't know if I fully, like, there's definitely an element of that. I mean, this community is one where that doesn't happen, and yet still, like, there's a broader problem, right? Do you know what I mean? Like, think about it this way. How many people have said that DSA is anti-black, DSA is taking away black power, brown power from the New York political machine? The DSA slate was all black and brown folk except for one guy. So there is this weird narrative that mainstream outlets also play a formative role in advancing that robs people of their identity, that robs people of their blackness if they're democratic socialists, that robs people of their Latina background if they're democratic socialists. And it's the same principle for Zionism, right? If you're critical of Israel, you're no longer Jewish. We saw this with Brad Lander. And Brad Lander is as pro-Israel as you can be while still being critical of Israel, right? And they made it seem like Brad Lander was actually anti-Semitically unseating Dan Goldman. All the Jews that voted for Brad Lander over Dan Goldman were no longer Jewish in the eyes of the media. This happens all the time. And it's very fucking frustrating. Can we stop saying black and brown? That's literally the problem right there. I mean, I don't know. What do you want me to say? BIPOC? Yeah, the establishment weaponizing racial politics to defend corporate interests over the rights of all people, regardless of race, is so disgusting. 4 out of 6 people here are not white, and one of the white people is Jewish, a group that they also claim the left hate. Is so bad faith, a disgusting way that they try to turn people against each other with millions in dark money from corporations and special interest groups. Even when phenomenal left-wing candidates like Janice, Dari Liza, Milot Kuros can win black and non-white voters, they spread misinformation and slander. These progressive women of color is truly discussing the lengths that they'll go to create a false narrative that somehow the left is more anti-black and white supremacist than the same centrist MLK warned us about. But anyway, listen. The other thing I was going to say is there is a truth to the fact that we on the left have not leaned into our black comrades as much. This is something that has to change. Okay? That's number one. Because at the end of the day, I will never be able to have the impact in a black neighborhood that the Jam Boys will in their own neighborhood in Chicago. You know what I mean? I will never understand this experience. You know, I can only empathize, but I can never understand it fully. I will never be able to live this experience. So that's one. Same with Sean the Black, right? So we have a lot of work. We have a lot of work to build a network and boost we have a lot of work to do as far as like developing a network and boosting black voices so that they can turn around and organize in their communities. So we can bring them into this larger working class movement. And part of that also means like going to HBCUs, for example. Like we don't have a presence in these spaces at all. We don't have a presence in black churches. We don't have a presence in HBCUs. You know who does though? Establishment Democrats. And not just black establishment Democrats, just establishment Democrats in general. And another part of that problem that draws, at least according to, Sean's analysis on this issue, another problem here is also the dismissive ways in which those on the left talk about DEI, affirmative action, initiatives such as that. I have always talked about it being a Band-Aid solution, and yet still one that is necessary, and talked about the broader the broader complications when you attack these sorts of things and like successfully destroy them, what that means for black people getting a leg up. But there are definitely some people who will just say, no, fuck that. Like, we shouldn't focus on that. In order to organize in the white working class, we need to not focus on things like that. Now that comes across as too dismissive. And it's a conversation that black people have heard many times over. Right? When people hear that stuff, when people hear things like that, when black people hear things like that, they go, oh, I know what this is. You don't give a fuck about me. Okay? That's it. That's it. So we'll never get the unks and the aunties on our side if we do that. What is this? I will be expecting to recreate this YouTube short of the next DSA event. Shut the fuck up, Oni. I mean, this shit's weird as fuck too. This is not. My policy is just, treat people like people. Don't go above and beyond. Don't go overboard. That's weird. That's no way to organize. It's far better to have black allies in these communities that bring us into these communities to help them organize than to go to those communities and do this kind of fucking symbolic otherizing of black people, right? Because that shit doesn't, that shit's lame and strange. And in some ways, it's also kind of racist because it's so performative. And it's also like, it still goes back to me. What am I doing as a white person? Look at me. It's white performance. Okay? Like, look at me. I'm a white guy and I'm going above and beyond with my acknowledgement. Just fucking be normal. Like, what is this performance? That's the way I read it, at least. That's why I hated the Nancy Pelosi kente cloth shtick, It's just silly. It's so transparent. It's so, maybe it works. I don't know. Maybe older voters like it. But in any case, yeah, this is the take I hear a lot. Yeah, we heard it for 200 years. Let us prioritize white people, please. Then you'll get what you want. Then we get cut out and excluded and told to be happy when we got the crumbs. Yeah. But the problem is, it's not like the establishment is giving black people anything either. But the difference is the establishment is at least like, the establishment offers, a comforting face, lip service, and it's there. It's funding. There's a funding vehicle from the party apparatus that trickles down to these black organizations and institutions, right? As they're talking about here, right? Dems will give money Like Jim Clyburn is always going to have money from the Democratic Party that he can distribute to South Carolina groups, right? To different black organizations and institutions in South Carolina. So there is like a payment patronage system that already exists. And that creates, obviously, a lot of trust.
Superstructure that allows people like Clyburn to basically take large segments of black voters and dump them into the neoliberal corporate section of the Democratic Party.
Yeah. Yeah, the reason DeGette got pissed off at Clyburn, he failed to get the black vote for her. That's why she wanted him replaced as a whip. Yeah. Notice how these articles always emphasize black and Latino leaders, not ordinary non-white voters. The divide isn't between non-white voters and the DSA. It's between non-white voters and their out-of-touch leaders who are enraged by the success DSA is having with non-white voters. And it's also having with non-white leaders. Because look, there is a generational divide here. Okay. That's the real secret. Everyone under the age of 35, every non-white person in this country under the age of 35 knows this fundamental truth. You are not getting a crumb of power or a crumb of wealth from your older relatives. Okay? That's part of the reason why. I mean, look at DSA. Look at DSA. Although the media and black and Latino leaders and organizers are claiming that like they're being written off, they're getting unseated. By who? By who? By who? By white people? Did we replace Nydia Velázquez with a white person, with a white man? No. Claire is Latina and indigenous. Claire Valdez. Did we replace Adriana Espaillat with a white man? No. Daria Liza is Afro-Latina. She's Dominican. So that's why this shit is so cynical and so frustrating. The real factional battle that takes place within the entrenched power that is the Congressional Black Caucus and the Congressional Hispanic Caucus, like the real machine politics that is frustrated and worried and fearful, is fearful that they're losing their seniority-backed positions that they waited for decades. They shut the fuck up, they played ball, and they sat around for decades hoping to finally arrive at some power within the party system. And now you got a 32-year-old activist coming in and unseating you? Are you fucking kidding me? Of course they're pissed. But that's also important to recognize. There is this generational divide taking place. That's what's going on. That's really what the anger and the resentment is all about. You're skipping the line. You're skipping the line. You're not playing the seniority game. Wait around. You need to first become a staffer. Then you need to work on campaigns. Then you need to run for local office. And then you need to be groomed by the person who has been in that seat of power for 40 years to retire and hope to God that they hand select you as their replacement. That is how it works in the Democratic Party. That's how Maylot won. Instead of waiting maybe 2 more seasons for Diana DeGette to retire and hand select her replacement, Mela skipped the line. Where was the racial narrative then? Maylot is a black woman, a young black woman. Was there any racialized narratives from mainstream outlets? Diana DeGette is being quite the racist. After all, look, she attacked Jim Clyburn back in the day. Is there a real through line here with her anti-black behavior? When will we address Diana DeGette's anti-blackness? No one ever made that article. Now, that would be a cynical and fucked up article to write regardless. But do you really put it past if the roles were reversed? If there was an incumbent black Democrat possibly on the verge of being unseated by a young white woman, you don't think that that would be the main narrative you hear from every fucking mainstream outlet? I mean, Haley Stevens is a white woman, and the media is treating it like she's a part of the Congressional Black Caucus. Haley Stevens is a white woman, and they're making it seem like Abdul is the white guy in this race trying to go after the black woman. Literally. Haley Stevens is a white woman who's Christian, and people act like she's Jewish. The weaponization of IDPOL is out of fucking control. It's crazy. They're like, how dare you attack Haley Stevens? That's anti-Semitic. What the fuck do you mean that's anti-Semitic? Between Abdul and Haley, there's only one person that has actually unseated a Jewish person from a position of power by getting tens of millions of dollars from AIPAC, and that's Haley Stevens against Andy Levin. That current congressional seat she occupies, AIPAC paid for her to do so because they didn't want an Israel critical Jew to be in that position of power. Okay? It's crazy. Yeah, the key or signature move here is to smear with countless allegations of sexism for manufactured microaggressions, followed by a do nothing, throw up your arms as Hillary did in 2016. Well, breaking up the banks won't end sexism and racism. Yeah, way to be dismissive of a candidate, 3-term, in parentheses, woman, congresswoman. These people are demons, man. They're fucking demonic. All they care about is power. That's all they care about. And they will stop at nothing to make sure that they eliminate all threats to their seat of power. Now, of course, there's a reason why they don't attack the Republicans in the same way. Because Republicans are not unseating them in their cushy, safe districts. We are doing that. Right? And Republicans, no matter how evil they get, that's a good funding vehicle for the Democrats. Without doing a single damn thing, you could just fundraise against how devastating the Republicans are. So it actually fits into this power structure. It's perfectly fine if Republicans are fucking dog shit fascists. That allows them to not do anything and still collect campaign funds. That's why they're way, way tougher on their fucking left flank than they are against the Republicans, right?
Sanders.
Yeah, on Andy Levin and AIPAC. Look, AIPAC spending millions to back Haley Stevens in 2022 against Andy Levin was indeed a radicalizing moment for a lot of people in Michigan. In an interview with Dave Weigel at the time, AIPAC's president said they targeted Levin precisely because, as a synagogue president, Levin had strong standing to criticize Israel's actions and defend Tlaib and Omar against attacks. So Andy Levin had to be crushed. AIPAC never saw the hypocrisy in their targeting of someone specifically because they were Jewish, or if they did, it didn't stop them. Has Levin endorsed Abdul? Day one, baby. Andy Levin endorsed Abdul, I think, day fucking one. Yeah. Anyway,